Time is now 3:30. Call to order. City of Norwood Planning Commission for March 6th, 2024. Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Present.
Mayor Schneider,
Present.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Present.
Mr. Hockney,
Present.
Mr. Sewer,
Present.
Item B, approve of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer,
Yes.
Motion passes. The minutes are approved, or the agenda is approved. Item C, approval of minutes, February 7th, 2024. Do I have any amendment to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask if there is a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer,
Yes.
Item D, new business. No new business on the agenda. Any new business from any of the commission members? Hearing none. Move on to item E, old business. E1, review draft ordinance dated 2/9/24B regarding food trucks. Ask Mr. Skelly to give us a brief bit of information about what he's done on this.
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So what you have in front of you as part of your package is a 4-page draft zoning ordinance amendment. Really, the guts of it are found on page 3. And quite simply, it's a very short and simple amendment. We are first providing for a new definition for the food trucks. And then we're adding a couple paragraphs to the existing section 112105, which is a current provision for a list of prohibited uses. So I think I mentioned at the February meeting, typically the focus of this is because a food truck is a mobile entity, it's not fixed to the land. Ideally, with this sort of operation, it should be operated from streets, subject to further regulation. It's in typical fashion, not typically a zoning sort of matter. A lot of municipalities do regulate it in the zoning, but it's I wouldn't say overkill, but it's something that's kind of odd because it's not physically attached to the land. So that's what the modified section 112105 does. You'll see in your copy, there's probably some highlighted text. That's just more in terms of recent stuff that was added following discussions with the chair and also Tim Gary for our law department. And then also one of the things we do have existing provisions for regulating vendors from the streets and also for licensing, which probably will need to be potentially looked at as well sometime in the future. So that's about it. Like I said, it's not a long ordinance, it's very brief, but hopefully it should provide the necessary new regulations for regulators in the future. So, and one of the things we did add is make some provisions for special events, etc.
Questions for Mr. Skelly?
Item C,
Mr. Sewer?
seems like I'm the only one that ever, am I reading that right? It says, your proposal is no mobile truck, cart, trailer, or similar vendors shall be permitted to conduct business or commercially on any private or public. So in other words, when I see no, that means you're wanting us to pass something that would, or propose to council something that says we will not have food trucks in, maybe I'm reading it wrong, in private or public lot property.
Correct. So we will not allow any food truck entity, food truck itself, to sit stationary on a lot. If they want to operate, they have to locate ideally on a street, which we will license. And then further to that, we made some exceptions with regards to special events or whatever. if they would operate, I don't know, from a public park or something.
I just want to make sure I was reading it right.
So it's wordy. Kind of-
Mr.
Well,
Chair.
Mr. Mayor?
So the crux of this is that we have mobile food trucks that have posted up on lots, on private property, on lots in the city that are sitting there, have been sitting there for months and months and months. And that is not, the operation of a mobile food truck is not mobile if it is sitting stationary in the same place for months and months and months. My understanding is that the Ohio state law states that it cannot sit in the same location for more than 40 days. And we've given notice to them at times. There has not been a push to remove them from those areas. But this is the planning commission sending this to city council for approval. City council members, all 7 of them, have the ability to review this. It would probably take 3 readings, and the city, the community members have the chance to talk to their elected representatives to say yes or no. That's what the city should or should not do. And city council, the 7 members of city council would have to vote, the majority would have to vote to approve this as a city ordinance. I don't have any other comments other than, there has to be a line drawn between restaurant owner operators that put a large investment of money into the restaurant that they build, and all the correct facilities to run a restaurant, to run a business, meaning they have to have bathrooms, they have to have parking, they have to have all the requirements to run a restaurant in the city. When a person buys a mobile food truck and just sits it on a pad and doesn't provide all the other required things that, ADA compliance, all of those, aren't they just skating the law? Aren't they just saying, we're not really going to do the job right per the requirements of the health department, per the zoning requirements? They're basically saying, we're just going to set up a mobile restaurant and not meet all the criteria. So it's wrong for us to hold the people that put a major amount of money into investing in our community to let others not do that, and then they lose business. So that's why I would stand behind this. Mobile food trucks should be mobile food trucks, moving mobile food trucks. And they do fill a need in the county and in the state, and they fill a need in the city of Norwood as a mobile food service, as an event type thing, or in certain situations. But posting up and staying in the exact same place for months and months and months is not what a mobile food truck is. And the request that came in for running electric to their mobile food truck so they could post up and stay there is a problem. And that's really what brought this to the forefront for us. There have been many complaints about the mobile food trucks just posting up the way they do. But a big part was that they wanted to take it another step. Let's run a 220 or 480 or whatever line it is, and so we can run off the electric and be even more permanently set in place as a mobile food truck. It's a mobile food truck. So that's why I would be behind putting this in front of council and letting council discuss it and letting the community have their chance to chime in and discuss it. And then we either remove them from the city or tell them, like this would do, you're mobile, be mobile. We'll support you. A lot of people like the food that comes out of mobile food trucks, but they need to live up to what I think the original intent was of a mobile food truck. That's all I got.
Other questions or comments? Would we like to set this for a hearing at our next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to set a hearing at our April meeting.
You're making it?
I'll entertain the motion. That would be for the
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Thank you, Mrs. Town.
Welcome, sir.
April 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion to set this for hearing at our April 3rd meeting?
I'll make a motion to set it for a hearing at April 3rd meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Mrs. Town, please call the roll.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinger,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skelly, for your work on this. Moving on to item E2, review draft ordinance dated 2/15/2024 regarding vape shops. Mr. Skelly, if you would let us know what you've done here?
Sure. So let me begin with some background for this, because it's a new topic, a new issue. Back in November, council passed a 270-day moratorium for vape shops coming to the city. Obviously, moratoriums, when they're provided for these sort of things, it provides a decent time frame for staff and city officials to look into this issue with greater depth and then hopefully come up with a range of solutions. So that moratorium would end in August, and just the way things are and our workload, we have kind of at least an early view into this. I don't know if it's going to get controversial or not, but if anything, touches upon health and safety, sometimes it can get very controversial. So sometimes it's better to have a decent lead-in time. So that essentially was the emphasis for getting this done. Obviously, vaping is a new sort of product. It's related with smoking. I think originally back in 2012, it was kind of considered as a alternative to smoking. But for many reasons it caught on. It caught on also for a lot of the youth and younger people to do it. In the actual moratorium that was passed by the city, I believe Chairman Powers actually prepared that. It provided a fairly decent history of the health impacts, safety impacts, even fires for vape stores, dealing with the storage of the chemicals, et cetera. So at this point, the approach taken for this was essentially, let's do a background study and what you have in front of you. And I kind of apologize for dropping you on today, but at least it's what I title as a green paper, essentially providing a brief background. And then if it is relevant or appropriate or contains sufficient information, then sometimes you would say, fine, prepare a white paper to get into more of the details and including some more policy direction. So that was the intent. You have that report now with you. It was discussed with Chairman Powers and also Tim Gary. It has been circulated, or hopefully will be, to the building commissioner. And my hope is that it'll help frame what's the best approach. We do have a 4-page draft zoning ordinance just to kind of flush out some of the ideas that was found with regards to the research and also with discussions with staff. So at this point, I also have prepared talking points, which I put on your desk, just outlining a bit of the highlights for the report. But my recommendation to the Planning Commission is, unless you have some specific questions, I can briefly walk through a bit of the zoning ordinance or the document, but I would encourage that now that you have it, take the time to look at the background report, take some time to look at the draft zoning ordinance, and see if it meshes with what you believe is appropriate approach for the city to take on this. So,
Mr. Skelly, if you could address one other item on page 3. It's under section 5. It is A1, the linear feet provided. We had discussed that with Mr. Gary from the law department that that 1,000 feet should
Correct.
likely be reduced. Would you talk briefly on that?
Sure. So with regards to the experience that other municipalities are taking when they deal with exclusive tobacco or vape shops, a lot of municipalities, and it's not just this, it's for similar to sort of uses that are less desirable, they will use a separation distance to kind of regulate the concentration and also the separation from sensitive uses. In taking that approach, I had the original idea sometimes using, okay, how long would it take for an average person to walk from point A to point B? And typically, if you wanted to discourage someone, human nature being what it is, if you're going to be walking for 5 minutes or so, you might say, I'll get in the car, or won't bother, or I'll do something like that. So I used the distance of 1,000 feet as something that would, and again, it's on the high end. I've seen higher for certain uses, and one of the municipalities, I believe, had a separation distance of 3,500. So definitely it's creeping up almost to half a mile or 3/4 of a mile. That said, we are a very small municipality. We're very dense. We do have something similar for adult entertainment, which is around, I believe, 300 feet. With discussions we've had with the law department, there was concern if we were using, let's say, 1,000 feet, that would pretty much obliterate most of the area. A good practice to kind of ensure that the regulation is not going to be challenged is try to provide some limited locations. So taking that sort of approach, I did some further calculations, what we considered reasonable. So if we would use a 500-foot separation, that would have a radius, essentially take into account 18 acres, which is the equivalent of Surrey Square, which is 20, and it has 2 existing vape shops in it. Using 750 feet, that would exponentially ramp it up to 40 acres. So I definitely would encourage you to revisit at least my draft, which originally had 1,000 feet, and pick something at least less onerous. So either 500 feet or 750 might be more reasonable. So that was the first suggestion. Another suggestion with regards to the list of sensitive uses, also to add public library. And again, there could be other ones related. When I was devising this, part of the issue is when you go back a couple decades where youth would hang out. Sometimes it was the mall, sometimes it was another place. I think today's youth is a bit different, so it's hard. So I used the more traditional things, schools, colleges, all that would still fit within the age restriction of 21. So if you have any additional ideas, please, pass that along. But those were the main 2 concerns we had. We used an approach where the BZA would still have control to consider this use, and it's viewed as a Class B type of retail.
What about Norwood City Parks
For
use? Putting that in the parameters also of the 500, 750 feet away.
It's in there.
yeah,
Where is it?
At that 1,000 linear feet, the last,
Public park is the very last one on line 3.
on the last line you would have college, university, adult group, or family home, hospital, nursing home, or public park.
Okay.
What's your question? Do we have private parks?
Stadium, other than something like the stadium.
I would say the green at Factory 52 would probably compromise a private park.
Okay.
it's sort of, jump in there. And I recognize what the effort is. I don't know that I stand behind the effort. when it comes to some of these. I mean, you're talking about a group or a family home, a hospital, a nursing home, college or university, and I realize we've restricted, beer sales cannot be this close to a school and certain things. But when you're talking about in a group home or a family home or a hospital or a nursing home, those are all adults. They can make decisions and they're not influenced by, oh, there's a vape sign over there. I'm going to run over there and see what it is. I feel like we're really stretching this when we start adding, a college or a university. Those are adults. They can make a decision whether they go to a vape shop or not. And we shouldn't be excluding where vape shops can be I understand the church, place of worship. Those two were put in there because they're typically in adult or in liquor licensing or things like that. Private and public school, I can understand private and public school and vocational trade school. But when we start hitting other areas, aren't we just infringing upon the rights of our citizens to say, sorry, we're not letting a business go in close to you. You're an adult, you can make your own decision. But we as a community, we're going to regulate that and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere close to where adults live. That seems overboard to me.
Yeah. No, and again, just to give you a background, so I enjoyed actually writing this and researching this because it was definitely like a thorny subject. And I don't know if you've been following the news, but with regards to the state legislature. So on this particular thing, we had a House bill that was passed, then the governor vetoed it, and then both the House and the state overrode the veto just because it dealt with a combination of terms of, as you expressed, we're getting to the point of, let's say, over-regulating what adults or businesses they do, and also in terms of it dealt with, let's say, in one particular municipality, Columbus, as to how they were maybe being overzealous with regards to their regulation. So it was definitely an interesting subject, but you're right, it was difficult to find the ideal balance to how to regulate this and how to move forward. Based on what you'll read in the report, 50 municipalities were approached and looked at and surveyed. Only 2 of them really had existing policies, and most of them that were in the process of passing moratoriums were still scratching their head to find the fine balance of how to kind of regulate these things. So, and again, the first part of the talking points, and we had a discussion before the meeting began, is like you can get these things irrespective of going to a vape shop or tobacco shop. You can buy it at a gas station, you can go online, and that's another thing, how to be fair, for lack of a better word, for other retailers. So.
Question, it seems like you're purposely avoiding any discussion of CBD or THC when you're talking vape shop. Is that?
Yeah, I think we could include it. It might require some further research because to me, it starts morphing into, first we have like the existing medicinal dispensaries and how they regulate that. Some people with the CBD, it's just, everything's getting so fuzzy for lack of being more scientific about it. So a lot of these lines are blurring. There's a lot of synthetic stuff, and it's just like, I think when it comes down to it, it's probably let the police do their job in terms of what is considered whatever Schedule 1 type of products, et cetera.
Yeah, I will say that as staff has discussed this, we've tried to kind of keep the subject scope limited, which is why we didn't include things like CBD in this.
Is that the next thing we're doing? Is that the next thing that's coming? Is that next year's question is now all these stores are selling CBD oil and gummies and we have no, okay, now let's start doing the research and put something together for that. I mean, should we be trying to get out ahead, planning to be ahead of that at this point to say?
The way I read the current draft regulations, and I think maybe last week I looked at it, like 11 pages, but the way I understand it, if you're an existing dispensary that's properly fully licensed, you're almost allocated one additional recreational license, or will, once you go through the lottery process. So, based on that, and they will have, they're also a separation distance of 1 mile. We have one already in existence, which I believe it's the same owner, that's going to be probably taken care of. So it may not be necessary based on the current regulations that I'm reading, but it's probably worth maybe having that discussion or a law department if it's something that we could perceive encountering more of the recreational stores opening up. But from what I read right now, I don't believe that's the case.
I would ask that you have that follow-up conversation with the law department, determine whether or not we ought to do some more research on that and discuss that here at the planning commission.
One thing you brought up the question regarding the separations. I did take some measurements, both from the existing stores in Surrey Square and also the one across the street, so I can have that to share. But both were essentially coming in at around 600 feet. So
Between the stores?
correct.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? I believe we would like Mr. Skelly to make the changes to college, university, adult group, or family home, hospital, nursing home, reduce that. And then reduce the 1,000 linear feet to 500 linear feet.
Yes.
Would we like to see that and discuss that again future meeting, or would we like to make those changes and proceed to a public hearing at our next meeting?
You're asking me or
He's asking us. If we do a public hearing, does that mean that it automatically, once the public hearing is closed, we take a vote at that point whether we move it forward? Is that correct?
That's correct. Would we like to take some time and individually send thoughts to Mr. Skelly and see if he can
Are we
make
getting,
some improvements?
we're nowhere near our, what we say, 270-day moratorium that we need to also.
August.
Yes, we do have time.
Let's,
I mean, this was just handed to us, some of this information. I'd like to do a little
Absolutely.
more.
let's review it next time. I would agree.
Okay, so we will keep this on the agenda for old business. And any of the commission members are free to send comments, questions to Mr. Skelly in the interim so that we can have another discussion on this in the future. Any further questions, comments before we close that agenda item? Hearing none, moving on to item F. We have no absent members, so moving on to item G, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Town, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Powers,
Yes?
Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Mrs. Sickinter,
Yes.
Mr. Hockney,
Yes.
Mr. Sewer.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 3:58.